If you're a software vendor with any kind of e-commerce features and functionality in your platform, you might be thinking about the payments element and whether you can actually create your own payments brand or resell another well-known payments company as your own payments, and therefore make extra money from every single transaction that goes through your platform. Now, on the surface, that sounds like a great idea, but here's why you should consider it carefully and probably not do it. So we all know that payments is an opportunity to improve our business model and add that extra revenue line. After all, Shopify made this idea pretty famous and kind of set the way in terms of offering payment services alongside your product to customers, and actually potentially even making more money out of payments than you would make out of your license fees or other fees from your product. Here's the things to consider why you shouldn't do that. So the first reason why you shouldn't do this is you might think that the extra margins are there because you can mark up payments, you can resell these payments, you can add on 1% extra to these payments. But the fact is that running your own payment service will come with added cost. So there will be the cost in terms of setup. There will be the cost in terms of having to do some of the KYC on your customers and those responsibilities. Will you be responsible for chargebacks? And then there'll be the cost of the customer service cost of actually being the primary interface between your customers and what happens with those payments, not just the interface between your product and your customers. So do those costs outweigh the possible upside margins that you could make through payments? So that's the first question you're going to have to ask yourself. And most people don't realize what added admin costs, setup, and responsibility comes from reselling or even white labeling a payment provider. Reason number two, payments has become extremely competitive in terms of pricing. So if you go and mark up the payments that go through your platform by 0.5%, 1%, I've even seen some people marking them up by 2%, then that is going to not be particularly attractive to a savvy user. Sure, you're forcing them to use your payment service that you're reselling or white labeling, but any savvy user that's using your platform is then going to look at the competition and say, can I get this service cheaper elsewhere? Because they might love your platform, but you've just put a hurdle and a big question in their mind around the cost of doing business with you. Reason number three, so you have decided to resell or white label payments in your platform. You are onboarding customers. They're having to use your payments technology along with your platform technology. That's all great. You're happy. You're getting your extra margins. But we know today that businesses are using more and more SaaS systems to run their own business. They're using up to 32 different SaaS products to run their business. Now, that means that it's very likely that another one of those systems has payments functionality in them. And if you're offering or reselling your payment service to your customer, how can they use that payment service in their other platforms to take payment? That might be through invoicing, through their accounting package. It might be through their e-com store or whatever. If you are, for example, an events platform, and you've decided to force them into having your payment service, how can they take that payment service into another platform and get their consistency across all their platforms with that payment service? They can't. So you've now put a big question in their mind around, again, using your platform and whether they can actually get compatibility with other platforms and your payment service. Reason number four, similar to the first reason, but reason number four is, are you really payments experts? Or would you rather spend your money, time, and investment knowing about your product and how your product works? So you're going to get lots of questions around payments from your customers, from the payment service provider. Are you willing to build a team around payment services so that you can resell and be your own payment payment provider to your customers. It's unlikely. And I think that the reality is that you don't truly understand the cost of having to build out that expertise in-house. Reason number 5, what happens when your payment service doesn't have those payment features or those alternative payment methods that your customers want? What if the brand that you're reselling doesn't actually move quick enough in the market to have some of those alternative payment methods? What if crypto becomes more accepted and your payment service provider doesn't allow you to actually have a crypto payment method? Or even your payment service provider may not have basic things like PayPal, Apple Pay, Google Pay. All of those things create 20%, potentially more uplift in the conversions of the basket at the end of the day. And you may be stuck with a payment service that is fallen behind the times in terms of those alternative payment methods. Reason number 6, your payment service that you're reselling may not be international. Now, the great thing about running a SaaS business or a software vendor now is that you can be global. You can onboard customers from anywhere around the world, and that's great. But if you are reselling a payment service that has licenses in a number of countries, that may restrict your target market or your addressable market in terms of those customers that you can onboard. So you can onboard them for your platform, but you couldn't onboard them for the payment service because your payment service provider behind the scenes cannot actually legally work with a customer in Brazil. Reason number 7, what if your business is doing really well and you started to attract larger customers who have already got established relationships with payment processors or payment providers? How are they going to onboard to your platform? Are you going to force them to use your payment service, or are you actually going to have to go and integrate the payment service provider that they want? So at Shuttle, we see and work with lots of platforms who work with the mid-tier to the enterprise customer. And we can tell you that every single one of those customers will be bringing their payment service provider because it is just such a challenge for them at that point to actually consider your payment service provider, and certainly consider the extra fees that you're wanting to charge. They've worked very hard to negotiate the cheapest possible payment processing rates. So reason here is, if you want to onboard bigger customers, you're going to need to work with the payment services that they want. And my final reason for not reselling or white labeling your own payment service into your platform is because you can actually generate a revenue share or commission from payment service providers out there. Now, that can be a challenge to go and manage that commercially and do all of that technical work, but that's the problem that we've solved here at Shuttle. So you can come and use the Shuttle platform, and from the first dollar that you process, you can get a revenue share through payment service providers. And so you get the best of both worlds, where you can have a democratic approach to the payment service market, onboard the biggest customers, not have the hassle and admin of all the KYC and building an expertise in-house, but actually still make money from payments.